What's the most significant you just fricked with the wrong person moment you've witnessed or experienced? I live in front of a hospital parking lot. Some guy in an expensive car cut in line. A lady in a van was super pee off and kept honking. He got out to calm her down. She got out, ripped off her wig and started screaming and pointing at the cancer center entrance. He looked like he wet himself and got back in his car. Still stayed where he cut in line though. A lady in a van was super pee off and kept honking. Sounds like my sister. She got out, ripped off her wig and started screaming and pointing at the cancer center entrance. Never mind. Sounds like my aunt. My father and his brother, who are both 6 feet 6 inches, were riding in my uncle's tiny little Chevette and a guy road raged and chased them into a parking lot. You could almost see the guy fill his pants when they unfolded themselves out of the car. 2 drunk guys were bugging this local busker, trying to get him to fight them, saying all sorts of xenophobic stuff. The busker was black. The busker just lost it. Obviously he had to deal with a ton of drunk buttholes. He picked up his guitar and hit one of the drunk guys across the face with it. I called the police when I saw it, and later got called in to give evidence against the drunk guys, who got arrested, saying that they started it. 2 kids, about 11 years old, were bullying this 9-year-old kid by instigating their little sister to go hit and kick him, with the threat that they would beat him with a hockey stick if he retaliated. The poor 9-year-old pleaded with them to stop, but when they wouldn't, he charged the kid with the hockey stick, took it from him, chased them off, threw the stick over the fence and continued to saunter home. I witnessed this from about 50 feet away at age 13. It took place in about a minute, and while I was contemplating a way to help the kid out, he just took matters into his own hands like a G. That little kid was not the one to frick with. When I was about 10 or so, I shot a cricket with a Nerf gun from a prone position and it dodged it, then jumped at me, and I got up in panic so fast. The gun flung from my hand into the kitchen, breaking a few glasses. Never fricked with crickets again. I was working in a sketchy part of Albuquerque when I realized a guy was following me through the parking lot. He started walking faster, so did he. I knew I wasn't going to get into my car before he reached me, so I took the knife out of my purse and turned around and shoved it in his face and yelled, "I am from Wisconsin, I can gut idea." Dude took off and I got in my car shaking. It was in the Four Hills. I worked at that movie theater that closed down, and I was 21 at the time and didn't know what else to do. So I pulled the one weapon I had and shouted the first thing that came to mind, and yes, I can gut a deer. No, I didn't stab him in the face, I pointed it in his face. Was that the smartest thing to do? Number. But you know, instinct and stuff. I'm just glad it wasn't actually a gang member, or I'd most likely be dead. I don't know you. That's my purse. After drinking and partying in the honch outside our base in Japan, my friend and I went to the on-base taxi stand to go back to the barracks. We hail and start climbing into the first open cab we see. This drunken white guy was running for it, but we beat him to it. We didn't see him. Anyway, he's furious and starts yelling at us. 2 girls, 1 Latina, the other black. "You stupid fricking N." And then a group of about 6 black sailors come around the corner to the stand. I don't know how it happened. Maybe Paul Mooney summoned them. Anyway, white guy changes his mind and ends up running, to the ships. A fight didn't break out though. Maybe Paul Mooney summoned them. Best thing I've read all day. Thank you. I work at a restaurant and 4 punks decided to dine and ditch. They ran out and got away, but luckily I overheard one of their names while they were eating. Long story short, I tracked him down on Twitter and the direct messages went like this. "Me. Haha. Nice try. We know who you are. You owe $40. Bring the money or we are reporting you to the police and your school. Insert HS name. You have until Sunday night." 1 minute later. "Punk, I'm terribly sorry for this horrible incident. Punk, I'm bringing the money right now. Punk, I'm terribly sorry, it wasn't even my idea. I had no choice but to run also, or else I'm in trouble. Punk, we left a bag of money." 15 minutes after I sent the message, a guy literally opened the front door and threw a Ziploc bag full of $40 of cash and change into the restaurant and ran away. Idiots. Probably legitimately wasn't his idea. Kinda sounds like he took one for the team. Sounds like you got the responsible one's name. In high school between classes, a couple of the defensive backs on our football team thought it would be funny to run full speed into the open doors to knock over the students that were leaving the classrooms. After seeing this happen a few days in a row, the football team's starting defensive tackle, decided to post up behind the door. After I felt the thump of my fellow teammate hit the door, I emerged from behind the door to find him laying on the ground. I reached out a hand and helped him to his feet. Then I told him, "Hey man, you gotta watch where you're going. There's a door there." I watched a guy try to steal a girl's purse. He ran past her, grabbed onto the strap, and tried to yank it off her arm. She was a lot stronger than he'd anticipated, because she pulled the bag back and sent him sprawling onto the sidewalk. She then kicked the crap out of him, screaming at him the whole time. As this took place in Montreal, people just watched her beat him up and clapped politely when she was done. She curtsied to the crowd, spat on him, and walked off. Having spent a fair amount of time in Montreal, I can absolutely picture this happening and no one being surprised. Don't frick with crazy French Canadians. French people yelling in French is cute. Canadians yelling in French is terrifying. Drunk high as frick guy on the bus kept saying really rude things about this woman. Her husband right next to her, short white guy, gets in this guy's face. Fricked up guy gets up to hit the white dude. White dude socked him in the stomach and then punched him in the face. Drunk he got knocked out and his mouth was super bloody. Someone call an Amber, Lance. I was in a subway station in San Francisco, Church Street, and this was almost 20 years ago. There was a well-dressed older Asian man, probably in his 70s as I recall it. A particularly dirty panhandler was giving him a hard time on the platform, asking for money and being really aggressive about it. The nicely dressed older gentleman reached into his pocket, withdrew a handful of change and tossed it lightly into the air between himself and the street urchin. When the bum looked up at the money, the old man karate chopped him right in the throat and the dude went down hard. The bum didn't get up and the old man just calmly walked a few steps away and continued to wait for the train. That was one ice cold mother. I had a bully named Bunny, her real name, in junior high. I have mild cerebral palsy and I just had surgery. So, here I am in the bus line on crutches in a cast up to my hip. She mouths off one too many times. I shove my crutches away from me. I go flying through the air with my leg jutting out like a bat wing. I slam into her, knocking us to the ground. Her eyes are huge. I get my face 2 inches from her face and say, "I could frick you up bad. You are a piece of crap and I don't want to get my hands dirty." People helped me up. After that she would occasionally say something. If I stepped towards her she would jump. My little sister was in high school and this much bigger, fat girl kept putting her dirty sandals on the back of my sister's chair. My sister politely told her to stop. She kept doing so. My sister knocked her feet off the back of the chair, but this girl kept putting her nasty sandals on the back of my sister's chair, even rubbing her sandal in my sister's hair. So my sister calmly walked over to her and beat her in the face until the teacher pulled her off. I had a guy that would sit behind me on the bus and flick my ears. I was in 4th grade, he was in 6th or 7th. I asked him to stop and I was even polite about it. Then I opened his face with my metal lunchbox. Joined the middle school football team. Kept getting rhinoed in the butt by the biggest kid in middle school. He was 6 feet, easily 260 pounds. Wanted him to stop, so naturally I turn around to push him away. End up somehow magically hitting him in the face really hard. I have never ran faster in my life after that. Sorry Big Red, I didn't mean to hit you in the face. TLDR, I am a b-boy that can run like Forrest. In 4th grade I switched schools, and on my first day of school I found the biggest kid I could and punched him in the face. He then proceeded to pick me up by my throat with one hand and pin me to the wall. When I was bouncing we were kicking 2 idiots out. Once outside they decided to double team one of the doormen, the cooler in fact. Then the father of one of these numpties decided to help since his son was being attacked. 3 punches thrown landed, 3 idiots unconscious, and the father wound up in a coma for a few days. Since our bar was smart, we had camera coverage everywhere and the police cleared it without hesitation. Super drunk kid couldn't get into a bar because it was at capacity, but he kept giving the bouncer crap. He continues to get up in the bouncer's face and the enormous bouncer is saying something like, "I'd love for you to swing at me. Go ahead." Naturally, the drunk kid throws a wobbly punch and is subsequently picked up and pile driven into the ground. The bouncer then got a few kicks in for good measure. Legit could have killed the kid. That said, I doubt he will be getting in the face of a bouncer again, provided he still has mobility in his extremities. That is arguably how the famous bassist Jaco Pastorius died. My father is a bona fide badass. One evening, he was alone at one of his favorite restaurants, and a guy would not stop harassing the waitress, so he just stared at him. After a minute, the guy says, "What are you starting at?" My dad says, and butthole. The guy jumped out of his seat to fight, and I knocked him out with one punch, dragged him outside, and stuffed him in a trash can. The family that owned the restaurant were always happy to see him, and treated him like an honored guest whenever he ate there. Sounds like your dad's default answer is also no. Some guy I know who's the usual internet expert on everything was going on about how to deal with changes in pressure in an airplane. Another guy told him how to cope with it, recommending the Valsalva maneuver. Internet expert got all huffy and insisted that the guy was full of it. The guy said, "Oh, I dunno. That's what I learned during astronaut training." Turns out the guy really was a multi-mission NASA astronaut. Fortunately, Mr. Expert was very gracious about it and we all had a good laugh. I think they shared a couple of shots of single malt after that. I'm still proud about this, although I probably shouldn't be. I worked as a bouncer in a club for a while. I don't really look the part, but I can both dish out and take physical punishment without much trouble. A male drunk customer was harassing a female customer. I don't know how it started, but she came to me and asked me to help her, so I told him to leave her alone. He mumbled something about me wanting to steal his target. Yes, he used that word, and apparently didn't realize that I worked in the club, even though I had the bouncer pinned to my shirt. He tried to punch me, but was too drunk to hit me properly, so I grabbed him and literally carried him outside. One day my dad and I were setting up our boat for a quick sail and a guy comes up to us and starts bitching about how we drove in way too fast. Boat ramps bring out the absolute worst in people. I tell the guy and my dad to calm down and just leave it. He says, "Shut up B. Leave this to the men." My father, who has the boat's 100 pounds mast in his hand, loses it and throws the mast at the guy and starts beating this dude. Never ever insult a man's daughter in front of him, especially when he has 100 pounds metal stick in his hand. On a cruise with friends for vacation, hit it off with this cute couple from the Midwest. The girl is a petite but fiery redhead. The guy is a 6FT2 ex-Marine. Both are super nice. We round a corner one day and a guy runs into ex-Marine husbando. He accidentally drops his drink. Cue the sounds of Mother, "Watch where you're going. This wasn't free. You're gonna pay for it," etc. Completely drunk butthole, obviously oblivious that he is thrash talking the Hispanic equivalent of John Rambo. The wife decked him once, then she snuck in behind him, kicked him behind the knee and put him into a chokehold. Asked very nicely to apologize to her husband. Guy was almost crying at this point, and the husband said something to the effect of "Let him go. Love, he ain't worth the effort." Turns out wifey is a cop and a Krav Maga instructor. Wife lets go. Drunkard scrambles up, calls us crazy and leaves. He avoided us for the rest of the trip. After a car accident during a road trip, kid driving the other car gets out, starts walking over all puffed up trying to look tough. When the other car we're traveling with pull up behind our truck, as unplanned, but perfect timing, all 6 of us full grown men get out and start walking up. You could literally see his balls shrink. Probably the time I pulled a gun on 2 guys who were threatening and harassing me. I'm a very small and young looking girl, and I don't think they anticipated much resistance. They scampered. When I was like 11 or 12 we had our home broken into. Among the stolen objects was my father's entire gun collection. Literally the next day my parents got a call from my neighbor stating they found their son having my father's guns, among other things. Eventually my father told the kid that he wouldn't press charges if the kid just returned everything right away. The kid and his mom and dad walked over to our house and met my father in the driveway. The son started returning the guns one at a time until he got to the last one, which was an AMT backup, super small pocket pistol. Using this tiny little gun the kid fired a single shot towards my father, missing and hitting our front door. My father promptly returned fire with the gun he had just been handed, putting 3 shots into this 13-year-old kid. I was playing on a server for a game called Rust the other day, a full-on clan of 47 players. The server could only hold 100 at a time. Began annoying a lone player minding his own business. The guy got annoyed and then proceeded to slaughter the entire army on his own in an all-out 47v1 deathmatch. He won. Not me but my spouse. She's 5 feet 3 inches, at that time weighed about 95 pounds. She's also a black belt. At a party, this dude would not leave her alone. Finally, she goes to dodge him and gtfo, but he grabs her by the hair and starts pulling her back to him. She freaking knocked out 2 of his teeth and left him on the floor, stunned. Everyone just laughed at him for getting his butt beat by a tiny chick. I was driving down the road and I was in the middle lane. The right lane was a turn-only lane. I drive through an intersection and there is a guy in the right lane slightly ahead of me who decides that he doesn't want to turn right, so he swerves into my lane. I slam on my brakes and honk my horn. I am actually nice and would have let him in if he signaled, but he just forced his way in, almost causing a crash. At the next light he gets out of his car to yell at me, and I notice this is not a very big guy at all. I am a 6 feet 5 inches 240 pounds black guy, so he starts yelling at me and I simply open my door and stand up and say go ahead and come and say that to my face. He took one look at me and sheepishly went back to his car. This dude in high school used to always run his mouth. He was a prick. He still is actually. He was running his mouth to this guy and threatening him. The guy kicked him in the knee and broke it. It was really funny watching him cry on the ground. A friend of mine has a great story like this. Her parents hired a contractor to redo their driveway. Long story short, he did a terrible job and refused to redo any of it or give any money back. Her dad at this point tells the guy before this, "You were my contractor. Now, you are my hobby." The contractor lost his clientele, reputation and business within a year. Guy in an online game called me a stupid C, told me to kill myself, etc. just for playing an unconventional character. I work for the company that makes the game, so I followed up on the incident to ensure his account was properly taken care of. Back in high school, some rugby player got into an argument with a small guy about a girl. They call each other names at noon, but that's not enough for the rugby player, who decides to wait for the dude outside the school at 5 PM with 2 friends of him. Guy get outside of school, meet them. The first one got his jaw broken with a side kick straight to his face. The second one, the first rugby player, was knocked down with a jumped roundhouse kick in the face. The third guy ran away. The scene happened in front of everyone. That's how we learned that the tiny guy was actually a Taekwondo champion XD. My uncle is a pretty well-known UFC fighter. For the sake of the story, we'll call him JJ Abrams. JJ was out at the bar with some other friends and went to get a drink from the bar. On the way he accidentally bumped a dude. He apologized and tried to walk away, but the guy flipped out and grabbed him. Guy says, "Do you know who I am? I'm JJ Abrams. I'll F you up." My uncle laughing says, "No dude, I'm JJ. Here's my." It shows him his ad. The guy white-faced and ran out. Pretty funny. My brother got mugged once when he was living in Toronto by some random junkie. At the end of the encounter, my brother had the mugger's wallet, knife and shoes. Still keeps them all on the shelf to this day as trophies. My brother has been super into martial arts since well before puberty, and has been a Krav Maga instructor for 15 years. When I was a child, I lived with a cat and the cat owned the backyard. One summer, I was in the kitchen window watching the cat chase a squirrel clear across the lawn. Then, in a single moment, the squirrel stopped, turned around, got up on its hind legs, outstretched its claws, and atted my cat the frick down. She WAA flabbergasted, A froze. A moment passed and that moment muat lasted nearly 100 years. Then, quietly, gently, my cat lowered her head and slunk away, taking sharp glances back at the squirrel which waited until she was gone under a pine tree before moving on with its life. There was this weird, socially awkward emo kid at my high school. He's walking home and I see him get jumped by 3 big, football player type looking dudes, busts out what looked like karate or some crap and takes all of them down. It was one of the most awesome things I've ever seen. I was playing a game called Darkfall, a PvP MMO with full player looting. It was early game and in the safe zone there was only one mob that dropped money. One player noticed that most spawned inside this one house and decided to stand in the doorway to fight them and not let other players in. I would not stand for this mob hogging piece of trash, so I waited for the perfect opportunity. When he took one step too far into the house, I jumped in the doorway and sat there while he was attacked by mobs. He pleaded to let me out, but I just sat and watched his health bar drop over half an hour of constant fighting. Him trying to teleport out in between fights, only to have a mob spawn, hit him, and cancel his teleport. When he finally died, I took everything he owned off his core and rode off into the sunset. Got separated from my friend at a concert. She was feeling kinda sick and looking for us when a drunk guy dance stumbled into her. She pushed him and he dropped his drink, then spun around and punched her in the stomach faster than his friend could say, "Dude, it's a girl." She punched him in the face, grabbed the collar of his shirt and barfed all down his front, then walked away. In high school, I turned a teacher in for some pretty serious gender-based harassment, statutory debauchery, physical shaming bulls that I had witnessed and heard about between him and another girl. It took me weeks to gather all the evidence I needed to turn him in. Once I had finally done it, I knew crap was going to go down any day and I was having to pretend like everything was normal. Sometime between when I had turned in my evidence and his arrest, he was trying to flirt with me by telling me if there's anything you need. I told him I was onto him and he had messed with the wrong girl this time. There had been rumors the year before of his actions with a different girl and even before that at another school. Ugh. That was the last time I ever saw him. He was arrested in class the next day. Frick that guy. Out at a club with a bunch of friends. Come to find out a few of them exchanged words with some dudes in the bathroom. Okay. Later, as we're getting ready to leave, one guy in our group comes back from smoking outside and lets us know the guys from the bathroom have rallied a few dudes and are waiting for us outside. Okay, we hit the exit as a group. 15 dudes, no one shorter than 6 feet, all doing our best to look hard. No one said nothing to us. So, at that moment, we were the dudes that they shouldn't have messed with. Next day, came to find out these same dudes that were waiting for us found a homeless dude and beat him to death. So, apparently, a little while after we left, these dudes were the dudes you shouldn't mess with. Was at a strip club in northern British Columbia. Small town, and not a lot of people are open-minded. Quite a few are xenophobic. Well, a big black dude with a freaking basketball-sized head comes in, must have weighed way over 300 pounds, and some drunk redneck shouts, "You know we don't like N in our bars." Took that black dude all of about 10 seconds to find who said it and knock him out. Was talking to a cop one night in Philadelphia after coming out of a bar and was waiting for my friends to pay out. Everything was great until some random guy came up and spat on the officer's shoes. Before I could even say the words "dude, what the heck," the cop had the guy by the shirt collar and was slapping cuffs on him and sat him on the curb while he radioed for a squad car. My friends caught the tail end of the whole ordeal and we decided that we had seen enough. So we said later skater to the cop and went and got cheesesteaks. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.